Remember when President Franklin Roosevelt said we're a backup in World War II? That's not what wartime presidents say. The day after Pearl Harbor was attacked, President Roosevelt addressed Congress as they voted on a declaration of war and said, we will not only defend ourselves to the uttermost, but will make very certain that this form of treachery shall never endanger us again. There is no blinking at the fact that our people, our territory, and our interests are in grave danger. With confidence in our armed forces, with the unbounding determination of our people, we will gain the inevitable triumph. Today, with more Americans dead from the coronavirus than died at Pearl Harbor, Donald Trump said we're a backup. At the darkest hour of World War II for the British, before the United States entered the war, it seemed that a successful Nazi invasion of Britain was inevitable. At that time, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill was being advised to negotiate some form of surrender to Hitler. Instead, Winston Churchill got on the radio to tell the British people, we shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. And today, Donald Trump, who calls himself a wartime president, said, we're a backup. Donald Trump brought the imagery of war into the White House briefing today in the person of a Navy admiral who seemed to bring good news about the delivery of 200,000 masks to New York City hospitals.
The 200,000 is going out as we speak.
Very specific about that.
It'll be delivered tomorrow.
Can I ask a question? Yeah, but let me be clear on that, if I can. What Jared announced, what the Admiral just unpacked, is that pallets are being loaded right now to send 200,000 N95 masks to New York City, to the public health hospitals.
So to the public health warehouse in New York City.
All the healthcare workers, help is on the way.
Help may be on the way to the hospitals or the warehouse. No, we have no idea where help is actually going to go, because in questioning by White House reporters, it turns out those masks are not being delivered by the federal government to any hospitals at all. No hospitals. Those masks are being distributed to commercial distributors, profit makers, who will then sell them to the highest bidder, including bidders in foreign countries.
This product that we're moving is primarily commercial product that would enter the commercial system and be distributed through financial business transactions between hospitals and these distributors.
So just to clarify, that explains why states say they're bidding like they're on eBay, because the supplies are going to the private sector, and then they have to go there to get the supplies.
That's normally how things. That's normally how things work, right? So I'm not here to disrupt a supply chain.
Disrupting the supply chain is exactly what you are supposed to do in war. Disrupting the supply chain is exactly what the governors and hospitals are asking for. They are asking the federal government to take complete control of this process, not leave it to the war profiteers who have states bidding against each other, only to then have the federal government come in and suddenly outbid them all on those same masks that they delivered to that warehouse. And when the federal government buys those masks back, as it might, we're finding that states that vote for Donald Trump and have Republican governors who Donald Trump aligns himself with get whatever they want when they ask the federal government for it. Even the states that haven't been taking the reasonable precautions that New York and California have been taking and other states have been taking, those friendly governors, those Trump-friendly governors like Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, have been rewarded by the Trump supply chain, rewarded in effect in a way for their recklessness. The homicidal recklessness of allowing these spring breakers to crowd Florida beaches when the whole world, the whole sane world was telling the governor of Florida that he was criminally negligent in allowing those people to infect each other on those beaches as they did. Everyone was telling the Florida governor that, except Donald Trump, who wants to be called a wartime president. If Franklin Roosevelt had told Winston Churchill, we're just a backup, and never actually became a wartime president, leading the United States in war in Europe against Hitler, then German troops would very likely have marched into London the way they marched into Paris. American troops never would have liberated a Nazi death camp if Franklin Roosevelt had told Winston Churchill and the American people, we're just a backup. We're going to leave Europe to Europe, leave Europe's fight to Europe. If Donald Trump is a wartime president, then the phrase has no meaning. Because Donald Trump is so profoundly ignorant of history, he has no idea how to even sound like a wartime president. He has no idea how to fake the role that he claims he wants for himself.